good afternoon, and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles. I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Got a great program lined up for you today. In just a little while, our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, is going to be joining us and leading a conversation with the pastor of a San Antonio church that says in just this first year of the Trump administration, a dozen members of her congregation have been arrested by ICE, 5 of them in just the last 3 weeks. So we're going to be speaking with her in just a few moments. So stick around for that. But first, as always, let's go ahead and start today's program by taking a look at what's trending across the border. Starting with a federal judge has blocked a move by Homeland Security to limit lawmakers' access to immigration detention facilities. Lawmakers have a right to make unannounced visits to detention centers, but DHS in July was seeking to curb visits with a new policy requiring lawmakers to give a week's notice before any visit. Now, the judge that stayed the policy determined that the further review would likely find lawmakers' rights had been violated, saying, quote, plaintiffs have identified numerous examples where their requests to enter facilities at a given date and time were rebuffed by ICE for failure to provide that notice, and they were not allowed access to the facility. That was written in her ruling. Democratic members of Congress who sued over the policy called it a victory for oversight. Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva, who we've had on this program from Arizona, said ICE used pepper spray against her during a protest outside a Tucson facility. Moving on to your other headlines, for the past month, the Justice Department has attempted to prosecute people accused of assaulting federal officers during protests of President Donald Trump's immigration policies. Attorney General Pam Bondi vows such offenders will face, quote-unquote, severe consequences. But an Associated Press review of 166 federal criminal cases brought since May against protesters in 4 Democratic-led cities showed the Justice Department has struggled to follow through on those charges. The review found that of 100 people initially charged with felony assaults on federal agents, 55 of them saw their charges reduced to misdemeanors or dismissed outright. More than 40% of the cases involved relatively minor misdemeanors, and all 5 people who have gone to trial have been acquitted. Moving on, the United States and Mexico have agreed to step up intelligence sharing on the growing use of unmanned aerial vehicles by cartels, or drones. The goal is to prevent or respond effectively to possible cartel drone attacks on the border. Now, the issue came up at last week's meeting of the U.S.-Mexico Security Implementation Group in Mexico City. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum says this is a topic of particular interest to the United States, the use of drones by criminals. This is something we had not previously discussed. They asked what Mexico is doing, what is it that we know? These are discussions that contribute to strengthen security on both sides of the border, end quote. In 2024, the U.S. Northern Command's top general told a Senate committee that more than 1,000 drones were coming across from the border in Mexico every single month. And for more reporting on that from our Julian Resendiz, you can always visit borderreport.com and search drones on the website. Time now to bring in our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, to introduce our guest for today's program.
Right. Hi, Rudy. Today we have Pastor Dianne Garcia. She's with the Iglesia, Cristiana, Roca de Refugio church on the south side of San Antonio, a church that was founded to help migrants. But now there's more that's going on there. You're telling me that ICE officials are arresting migrants from your congregation when they go into their government-mandated check-in appointments. Welcome, Pastor Dianne. What's happening?
Thank you. Yes, we've had a number of members of our congregation detained, several of them already deported, many of them in detention right now. Most of those that were detained at their ICE check-in when they went to report, as they have to do every 6 months.
So I think you said 5 have been arrested in the past 3 weeks, 7 total deported. Are those the accurate numbers? 12 in total arrested. Is that since the second Trump administration came on board?
Yes, exactly. Their ICE activity comes in waves. So we saw heightened activity in the summer here in San Antonio, and then recently, in about the last few weeks, we've seen more activity. So we've had more members detained.
And so they go to their, you were mentioning about every 6 months, just to inform viewers, the government sets these meetings for migrants who are seeking asylum or who are in immigration proceedings to check in on them, to know their whereabouts, right? So this is not something they can skip. They have to go to a set appointment. And then what's happening? I mean, are they allowed a phone call? I mean, how are you finding out what's happening to them?
Right. So generally, they have to go to their ICE check-in just to say that they're still here. And often they are outside of the facility and they're allowed to wait outside. Someone comes out and they just sign a paper and say, yes, this is me. I'm still here. This is my address. And then they let them go. What we've seen recently is that they're asking more people to enter the building. And from the time that they enter, they are then detaining many of them there. So they have them enter, then they have them do fingerprints, then they have them go further in the building, and eventually they say, we're detaining you.
Do they give a reason for why they're detaining them, and have any indicated whether they've signed, you mentioned some paperwork, are they signing self-deport papers?
Generally, there is pressure to sign self-deportation or voluntary departure. At that point, they're usually being asked to sign something saying, this is still my address, this is where I live. It's sort of a way to get them further into the building, farther into the process, to the point where they can detain them, because they don't want to be detaining people outside the building, which would cause a scene and a lot of upset amongst the people there. So they're sort of finding these ways to get people into the building and get them moving in, and then they're detaining them there. Everybody that we've had detained has been valid. Their status is valid. They have been here legally. They've been going through an asylum process. So they're not detaining people who are showing up at the ICE office that I have seen because of any criminal record. It's just, we see these people are here. Maybe we need certain numbers today, and so we're going to take them in.
Now, do these people, do they speak English? Do they understand English? You're mentioning a lot of paperwork that they have to sign. Do they know what they're signing?
The people that I serve, most of them do not speak English or read in English. There are certainly many immigrants that do, but they do have all their paperwork in English. And even when you submit your asylum application, it's all in English, and you have to submit it in English. So that is definitely a barrier for us as a congregation, as a community. And they do not provide translated versions, certainly not once you're in the system. Once you're in detention, everything is done in English.
Are children also being detained? Are children with their parents at the time? Describe, kind of paint a picture.
Yeah, so you do have to go, if your child's case is attached to yours, as is the case with many, especially single parents, their case is attached to theirs, then they have to present themselves together and show that they're all still here. And so we haven't had, before the last couple of weeks, we hadn't had any children detained with their parents. It was parents taken out of a family while the children were left here with the other parent. But in these last couple of weeks, we've had 2 single moms from our own congregation that were detained with their children there at the ICE office.
And we did reach out to the Department of Homeland Security to ask them, are you arresting people at ICE check-ins? And so for fairness sake, here we want to put up a slide that shows the statement from DHS. They say apprehensions at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services offices may occur if individuals are identified as having outstanding warrants, being subject to court-issued removal orders, or having committed fraud, crimes, or other violations of immigration law while in the United States. These actions are typically carried out by law enforcement partners such as Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I think we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, want to talk about whether, these people who have been arrested have a criminal background or not.
Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Time now to continue our conversation with a pastor, Dianne Garcia of the Iglesia, Cristiana, Roca, Refugio Church in San Antonio.
Pastor Garcia, before the break, we were talking about DHS has told Border Report that if somebody could be arrested if they have an outstanding warrant, subject to court-issued removal, committed fraud or crimes. So tell us about the people that have been arrested from your congregation, do any of them have outstanding criminal complaints or have been convicted of a crime?
Right. I think this comes down to how you define committing a crime. So none of the people from our congregation who have been detained have outstanding criminal records or warrants or anything of that nature. However, many of them did cross under the Biden administration program known as CBP-1. And in fact, they did that because they wanted to do the right thing. They waited in Mexico to cross correctly with this application. But then the Trump administration declared that program to be illegal, that it was implemented illegally, and that everybody who crossed that way is therefore illegally here and has committed a crime. So, they're kind of changing the language and the structures in order to put more people in this category of having committed a crime, even though when most of us think of crime, we don't think of someone waiting a long time, applying correctly through an app to cross on the border and presenting themselves and giving all that information. That's not the kind of criminal that we think of when we think of criminal.
So let's go back, because it's been a while since we've heard the term CBP-1 app, but that was the way that migrants could wait for an appointment. And sometimes they could wait for 9 months to a year to get a CBP-1 app appointment. I mean, so many of them could have been waiting south of the border to legally cross what was illegal at the time.
Exactly, yes. And we've had several of the people who have been detained and since deported waited 8 months, 9 months, just as you say. They waited a long time with this desire to enter well, to do the right thing for their kids so that they would have good status, so that they would be able to get their kids in school easily and get a work permit and start working here. That was the goal. And those people in particular have been targeted because most of them are here less than 2 years, which makes it easier to deport them. And most of them entered in this way that has since been declared illegal. And
so the Trump administration is able to say that they are subject to court-issued removal orders because of that.
Exactly, yeah. And that's just the way they're trying to change statuses and change language to kind of make more people susceptible to deportation.
So what about children, U.S.-born children? What's happening to them? You mentioned that there have been few women who have been arrested with some children. How many children? What are the ages? Are any of those U.S.-born citizens? Where are they now?
So we've had 4 children who are currently in detention. They are all younger. One's a toddler. The other 3 are between the ages of 5 and 10. They are all citizens of other countries. Most of the members of our congregation have children that were born elsewhere that they traveled here with. A few have American-born children, but luckily they haven't been detained yet. But that is an issue, and we have some people trying to figure out, what would I do if I were deported and my American-born children was with me? Would I have them come back or not?
And where are they being held? I think you told me the Dilley Immigration Processing Center, which is southwest of San Antonio, and then the Karnes County Immigration Processing Center, which is southeast of San Antonio. There's a good 90 minutes or more separating the two. Is that correct? And are you visiting them? Have you seen the facilities?
That's right. Yes, we actually have people in more detention centers, but mainly at Karnes. That's a facility for single men and single women. And then Dilley, which is a facility that houses single women and also families with children, single women with children, but also parents with children.
Okay.
And I have visited them many times in those different detention centers. It's always a hard process. I mean, I think in what we've been talking about, we haven't mentioned the emotional impact of all of this in our community. It's extremely difficult. It's very sad. It's really tragic to see families torn apart, to see kids celebrating, thinking about celebrating Christmas without their parents. It's very hard. It's hard to visit detention, but I do that to try to bring some hope to the people that are there.
How do you as a pastor reconcile with the notion of talking to your flock and advising them on doing the right thing, like going to a government check-in, but also knowing in your heart and that they could be arrested and detained and possibly deported? How does that affect you? What do you do?
It's very difficult. when people ask me if they should go or not, I try to just put the facts on the table and say, this is what could happen if you go. This is what could happen if you don't go. I've talked to some people. I remember one man in particular over the summer. We talked at length about it. He decided to go, and he was detained at that check-in. And so it's hard to know what to say to people, but I try to not make a decision for them and allow them to make the decision for themselves. And I try to bring them hope and say that, our community is here to support you. You're loved here. You matter here. And we'll do everything that we can to help.
And that gentleman, has he been deported or is he still in detention?
He has been deported. Yeah, he's from Venezuela and he's back there now.
Your church is a Mennonite church, and I think it was founded in 2023, if I'm correct, and to help migrants. And you're a second-generation immigrant. Tell me about your background. Where are your parents from? And tell me about how your church started.
Yeah, I'm from New Jersey originally, but my mom was
Well, that's still in the United States.
Yes, indeed. But my mom was born in Ecuador. My dad is from here. So I feel like I have some connection to the immigrant experience in some way. Although, being biracial, it's always kind of a balancing act between two different cultures. But because of that, I had started working with immigrants here in San Antonio at a different church that had an immigrant ministry and just really connected with them. I felt like they were family more than people I was serving, and really wanted to form community with them. And we together thought of this idea of forming a church that was a place of home and belonging for immigrant families. So, of course, we welcome everybody, but the idea is really to be a place where immigrants are welcomed, where they can lead, where they're empowered to really be a part of the church and to make the decisions about the church, that it's a place for them rather than a church that has a ministry that serves them. Although we do also have that now, we do also have a ministry. We really wanted to be a place that at first and foremost was a family for immigrants who are often far from their homes and far from their families.
How big is your congregation? I mean, más o menos, and I'm sure your numbers increase depending on the holiday season, but about how many members do you have?
We have about 60 members. On any given Sunday, especially in these times, not everyone will be there. And some people are still connected, but far away, or they don't, they work on Sundays. But in terms of people who are really actively participating, it's around 60 families.
So to have 12 people detained, that's a big percentage of your congregation, right?
Yes, it really is. It's been very hard for our community. Not all of those people that were detained were really active members in our community, but some of them were. And one of them was our worship leader. One of them was the husband of our children's program director. One of them was a woman who was just there every single Sunday at every service, always giving her testimony, always talking about how much she loved the church and this family. And so when those people were detained, that was particularly hard because people felt like it could be anyone. No one was safe. Even people who had served and were responsible and important members of our community, that they were all at risk.
Have they indicated they're afraid to even come to church because of being arrested?
Yes, it's definitely a fear. People are afraid to go anywhere, but also to church. And I think, our church being a church that's identity is to be a place of home and belonging for immigrants. It's something that we think about a lot, and I try to communicate to them that we're taking as many precautions as we can, and we also try to offer online services.
Do you think you're being targeted because you just offer Spanish-speaking services and your church was founded to help migrants? I mean, do you think that perhaps ICE is watching your congregation?
I'm sure they are. I don't think that they have yet specifically targeted our congregation. The people that have been detained in other settings, although it has impacted our community certainly a lot. But I believe that they know who we are and where we are, and so we try to take precautions to prevent anything happening. It's a constant worry, a constant stress, but we also recognize the importance of gathering and being in community and being there in person with one another, and how important it is to hug someone whose husband has just been detained, and how important it is to share a meal with someone whose mom was just detained. And so we try as much as we can to continue to do that even now.
You are not releasing the names of those who have been arrested because you're trying to, you told me, protect their families and their cases currently. You know, you actually are very outspoken to come out and to say these things on air. I mean, that's very courageous. Are you fearful of retribution yourself?
Sure. I mean, yes, I think we all understand that there's risk to it. I feel like I have to speak up. I can't not say something when I see people that I love with all of my heart being hurt so much, suffering so much, being taken for no reason, having their lives upended, having their families torn apart. I feel like I can't stay silent through that, and I'm willing to take on some of that risk on behalf of my congregation while trying to continue to protect them, of course.
Wow. Well,
I did want to ask Pastor Dianne, have you spoken with any other pastors in the San Antonio community, and what are they saying to you about anything that they're seeing?
Yes, most of the pastors that I know who have Spanish-speaking congregations are seeing very similar things. Many members of their congregations being detained, and kind of we're all scrambling to try to figure out, how do we support the people that are still here? How do we support the people who have lost a wage earner and their family? And just trying to support one another too in this time.
All right. Well, we appreciate you joining us today and for speaking with us. I know it's a difficult topic to address, especially with the holiday right around the corner, but we appreciate your time today, ma'am.
we hope to stay in touch and have you on again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with Pastor Dianne Garcia of the Iglesia Cristiana Roca de Refugio Church in San Antonio. Stay with us. Border Report Live. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. So after leaving back in November, Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino has made a return to the area of Chicago to oversee the immigration enforcement operation under the name Operation Midway Blitz. And as Eric Runge tells us, officials say the crackdown will continue for several months.
Today we hope that there will be no more kidnappings.
Under the famed Little Village Arch, a protest grows.
We are scared.
Yesterday, immigration enforcement agents led by Border Commander Greg Bovino once again rolled through the streets of Little Village.
They come around, they think they own these streets and they can do whatever they want.
They detained several people, including this 22-year-old on a bike, whose family says he is undocumented but has no criminal background. Community leaders say Bovino is back to terrorize the people of Chicago, not make the city safer.
He's not going after criminals. He's going after innocent people.
The Department of Homeland Security released a statement saying in part, quote, "As we said a month ago, we aren't leaving Chicago and operations are ongoing. Operation Midway Blitz is achieving what Chicago sanctuary politicians have refused to do for decades: decrease crime and remove the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens who put American people in danger." CPD statistics show violent crime was already trending down before Operation Midway Blitz got started, and records show a vast majority of people detained during the operation had no criminal record.
We were not given any notice by them, and they seem to already be deploying again with masks and unmarked cars and SUVs into neighborhoods. They call it enforcement, we call it harassment.
The governor encouraged people to continue to record federal agents in action and post them online. Several videos of yesterday's immigration enforcement were all over social media. Community leaders say at least 15 people were detained yesterday from Berwyn to Brighton Park and Cicero to Little Village.
It's just wrong. It's really disgusting.
That was Eric Runge reporting from Chicago. If you missed our conversation with that pastor of a church who says just a dozen people from her congregation have been deported or put in detention in the last year, 5 of them in the last 3 weeks. Well, remember, you can stay informed on the story shaping the U.S.-Mexico border while you're on your commute into work. Maybe you're out for a run or at the gym, or maybe doing some grocery shopping, as Border Report Live brings you some real-time updates, expert insights, and voices from both sides of the border in podcast form. You can listen now on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and you can watch or listen on YouTube. That is going to do it for us for today's edition. For Sandra Sanchez, our South Texas correspondent here in the Rio Grande Valley, my name is Rudy Mireles here in Harlingen, Texas. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you all next time.